Has AI killed SEO?
Definitely not. I think SEO is more important than ever. Whether it remains to be SEO is like, oh, we're just optimizing and ranking websites. Probably not. I think it's already starting to, cover multiple surfaces, including, AI, social, etc. But I think the concept, as long as people are looking to purchase things online, there will be a vested interest in, people influencing that search journey for people to find their products. So, no, definitely not.
Welcome to the latest Impact of AI Explored podcast. This episode, we have Daniel Horowitz. Daniel, let's get straight in. Has AI killed SEO?
Definitely not. I think SEO is more important than ever. Whether it remains to be SEO is like, oh, we're just optimizing and ranking websites. Probably not. I think it's already starting to, cover multiple surfaces, including, AI, social, etc. But I think the concept, as long as people are looking to purchase things online, there will be a vested interest in, people influencing that search journey for people to find their products. So, no, definitely not.
Okay, that's a good start. So, Daniel, thanks for coming on today. Maybe just what's your background in SEO? How did you kind of get into it?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I actually started out, I went to college for creative writing. I was doing some like online journalism, things like that. And, you're just kind of learning certain like principles of on-page SEO, when you're writing for online publications, how to like write a meta description or do, an SEO title tag or an H2, etc. So I kind of learned about it, a little bit through that. And then, I was doing bunch of freelancing, and I happened to come across position doing offsite SEO like as a contractor for an agency. And I just applied cold, and I got the gig, and I was a contractor there, and then ended up being a great fit for many reasons. And I actually ended up taking over their offsite SEO department. So I was kind of like led and build out that whole department. And we work with some, major brands like Shopify, E-Trade, Jotform. And I did that for about, almost 7 years. And then I moved to Informatica to be an in-house SEO, which is a whole different ecosystem. But definitely really enjoy it. So I've been there for about 2.5 years now. So yeah, I've been in the space for like about a decade.
Okay, so obviously we're talking today about how AI is impacting SEO, but kind of before AI, what are kind of some of the main components of SEO?
I would say optimizing your website correctly. So, obviously looking up, keywords or different search terms that websites are ranking for. This is like the basic building blocks. Optimizing your page toward that, whether it's, your title tags, headers, etc. And then, creating comprehensive content that covers that sort of topic, which is what we call topical authority. And I'm kind of a big evangelist for that. Into your website. So like, for example, if you were writing about responsible AI, right? Like there are a lot of different angles on that. You wouldn't just write like a what is responsible AI article, but you would have to actually demonstrate to Google that like, hey, we're an expert on the subject. So you would want to publish like different points of view on, what is responsible AI, how this impacts X, Y, or Z. And those are kind of the basic building blocks. And then of course there's the offsite component. Like I mentioned, that was my, previous role, heading that up in an agency, which is getting other websites to link to your website through, outreach, guest posting, etc. So all those things together, I would say, keyword research or now topical research, it's really become on page factors and off page. So those are like the three pillars of SEO.
So what's been the big change now with AI and SEO?
I mean, there's been a lot. I would say if I had to pick one thing, it's the lack of data and transparency into your work. So I think previously, a lot of SEOs use, rank tracker tools and things like that. But really Google Search Console is always the go-to because it's your first party data, right? Like it's Google's telling you like, okay, like you've gotten 11 clicks from this platform to this article, and these are the ranks. So, like, you know that for a fact. It's not third party. Now, because of all these AI surfaces, so, AI overviews being probably the biggest impact on SEO right now. I think, there'll be other things that matter going down the road. But with AI overviews, you don't get any level of visibility into that. So you kind of have to use third party tools to approximate like how well you're doing, how many mentions you've gotten in AI overviews. But Google themselves don't provide that data. So, we have to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and kind of like creating a patchwork together through like a much more like fragmented search experience than I think has historically existed.
So yeah. As you said, like one of the things I've noticed is obviously the first search result on nearly everything now is AI generated. Um, so it definitely seems like there's been a change that you can't get to the top of the ranking on a page because the first search term on the page is the Google AI result.
Yeah, no, it's a big problem. I mean, you definitely can optimize to get a link placement in those AI overviews, but the thing is, people don't really click them, or we have very little visibility into whether they are clicking them. Is really
Mm.
the bigger
Yeah,
point. So,
I personally would just read what it tells me and then move on
Yeah,
to
right,
on
and
to the next.
I think the biggest thing, they've done a lot of like UX studies on how people are using this. So I think it's something like 70% of people don't even click past the fold. This has been a big problem for us at Informatica. So for example, like we have a lot of product areas and we've built kind of like topical expertise. Let's take like master data management as one. So we had, kind of a pillar piece of what is master data management that used to perform really, really well. It was ranking top of the SERPs, and even with the AI overview, it's still in the top of the AI overview, yet traffic is down to the page like 50%, no change in rankings. But it's because it's being answered by the AI overview. If I want to know what is master data management and I'm looking for, 3 sentences to tell me that, well, I'm not going to click to a website at all now, right?
yeah. And then how does SEO and then when you're in like say ChatGPT and how do you kind of what's the difference in how it's pulling its search results and that in comparison with say Google?
Yeah, so they kind of use actually a lot of Google's index. So there definitely is some overlap for sure. That said, I think it's still a little emerging. I don't think anyone 100% knows, to be honest. I mean, I think, people know like, they're using like RAG to pull articles and, it's not as, there are certain things that are de-emphasized or more emphasized, but I think the big change with AI driven search with like say ChatGPT is where it's pulling the information. Things that would never surface on Google are getting surfaced. So I'll give you a good example with Informatica. Our product is IDMC, which is like our cloud native, kind of like all in one data solution. But we used to offer Informatica Power Center, which was an on-premises solution, which is kind of in the phase of being retired, right? Yet, if you go to ChatGPT and you're and looking for recommendations around different data software, a Power Center gets recommended a lot more than IDMC. That's a real problem for us. Like it's great that we're showing up, but we're not showing up in the right way. So
Yeah.
that's something we're kind of working to tackle right now. But you have to think like how many this is a legacy product, right? It's been around for, 30 years or something. So, how many mentions are this across the internet that we have no visibility into, not just on our own website, but, articles from 10 years ago or something that mention this. So like we have, we're in the process of this, but like have to do like a really comprehensive audit of like, well, why are we showing up for Power Center instead of IDMC? So these are all the things that, I think people are trying to figure out in this AI search landscape. But, before it's like, well, we chose narrative because it's our website. So if we say it's IDMC, it's IDMC. Obviously, there's going to be some level of search volume around Power Center because, it's a legacy brand and people know it. But ultimately, if we're not feeding content around Power Center, well, we're not going to show up for that as long. Not the case in ChatGPT. So.
Oh
So
wow, but
how do
that
you then go about, you said that it's mentioning a legacy product. What action do you need to take to kind of remedy that and get newer products mentioned by the LLMs?
So a big thing is actually finding all the places that you would never expect on your own website this is what we're doing right now. So for example, we have a lot of like documentation, like docs,
Mhm,
stuff that, it's like, okay, this is 15 years old and it's not indexed by Google. So there
mhm,
would never be any reason that would be surfaced, but it's clearly drawing from a lot of this. So right now we're doing a huge audit to find like, okay, like what are all the instances of this? Like, we need to retire these or, de-index more than de-index them. We need to delete them.
mm,
They've already been de-indexed. So it's an undertaking for sure. And all this because, it's able to draw from all of this stuff all across the web. And, it's not like we have, what AI cites like as links is not really why it's happening. When ChatGPT cites links, I think that only accounts for like 0.5% of web traffic, and a very small percentage of people click links through ChatGPT because that's not the focus of the
No,
platform.
they
But
just want answer.
exactly. They want yeah, I mean, that's why I think a lot of SEO, I mean, there's different terms floating around now, like GEO, generative engine optimization, EO, engine optimization. But really, it's just SEO is like evolving into, being able to answer the question quicker. So,
Yeah.
people are not going to, like if people keep seeing Power Center, well, they're going to think that we offer Power Center and we don't.
So just in terms of your own work, you've been doing some pilot work around AI searching.
Yes. Yeah. We've done a lot around like AI overviews, visibility. I think I kind of mentioned before, like, you can't really track that directly with Google Search Console, which is crazy. It's crazy because it's their own feature that they're giving you no visibility into. So you have
Mm,
to, we have like the AI SEO toolkit from SEMrush. So we kind of use that to track, to kind of like approximate, our mentions and impressions from AI overviews. Again, it's not perfect by any means, but we have noticed that, you actually are able to optimize on page to be more present in those AI overviews, like kind of the, example I use like of master data management, where like we already are the authority on this. So like to get mentioned in that AI overview was a lot easier than like if we had no, not demonstrating any authority or expertise to Google.
and
And would you then say that if you're looking at how this is going, that keywords are becoming less relevant, and it's more about having the correct content available on the
Yeah,
page?
I think it's not that keywords don't matter. Like, it's not a binary, but yeah, I mean, as far as like keyword research being the end all and be all, not really, but really trying to, a big thing we're doing in Informatica is like working with our SMEs to, create topical maps. And like, they're really close to like what the customers are looking for in terms of information. So we're developing it based on that. I mean, search volume is a factor, of course. Like we don't want to write something that nobody's going to read, but sometimes it's okay if not that many people read it if there's a high intent, right? I mean, we're selling enterprise software, so like we're not a publication where we're ad revenue or volume of
No,
traffic is the metric.
you're not Spotify.
No, definitely not.
No, so you just need 3 good viewers that buy your software. That's better than 100 views that don't do anything.
100%.
Yeah, cool. And you said a little bit about the optimization. So you're saying that keywords are not slightly less relevant. Can you elaborate a bit on how we can be even more visible in this? I just want an answer in 3 sentences, so that your name is somewhere in these. If you ask a question, it gives an answer, and if you want more information, you should go to the authority on this subject, and that's.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you the way we do it is actually using the first party data from Google Search Console, the impression data level data, to see what phrases people are actually searching and trying to speak to that in kind of like very digestible chunks within your
Yeah.
content. So which is really nice because even if, let's say, we're looking at master data management, we can type that query into our search console and see like, here are all the ways that people are finding us with this search term. These might not show up on like an SEM rush, but we know that it has some level of impression volume because we know people are finding us for this already. So we could actually, we could look at those terms, do some competitive analysis around them. This might not have been something where we would have come across it in keyword research, and then actually create content to serve that intent because, we know they're already surfacing our website for this.
Really cool. James, your thoughts? Because you're looking a little bit.
No, I'm just
like you're
trying to
thinking
take it
really
all
hard.
in. So Daniel, if we have to like kind of break it down, that what changes do you need to make to your content now, to really have an impact? Like, are there key changes that we should be looking at?
Definitely. Get to the point sooner, I think is the, I think the internet has kind of had this incentive for a very long time. And, this incentive was rewarded by Google. So that's why people are doing it is, you would write a very long preamble to an article. Like, if you're writing a cooking recipe, be like, oh, I love spending summers with my grandma in Italy and she taught me this recipe. Like, nobody cares. They just want the gnocchi recipe. Right. So, just say like, oh, here's a gnocchi recipe and just provide it as soon as possible. I mean, you could provide context and information, but give it to them up front. Don't bury the lead. So I think that's really from an on-page perspective, that's the big shift because that's how you get cited by, AI overviews, by, soon to be probably a default experience Google's AI mode, which is super buried now, but that's going to be really important, I think, the next year, ChatGPT, all these different, answer engines. So yeah, just get to the point.
Leave out the storytelling.
Exactly.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So just more direct in what you're saying in, say, a blog post or something like that.
Yep. Yeah. Just try to give the most pertinent information up front. That said, I mean, of course you can create context or, down the road, but just assume that if the person clicked through an answer engine, they probably did it by accident just to verify that it's true. I mean, that's what people have seen. Like when people click through ChatGPT, it's not because they're necessarily looking to elaborate. They're just looking to verify.
So because we've all had ChatGPT, hallucinate links and then you click on them, go, there's no content about what you said and sourced there. What are you talking about? So
definitely.
Yeah. So we all know that with these AIs, you have to check the work, and I think, as you said, that is something that people are doing. They're clicking links not necessarily to get more information, to actually check the sources that ChatGPT or whatever AI you're utilizing has said it pulls the data from, because sometimes, as we all well know, it's hallucinating and or lying.
Or
outright lying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's not call it hallucinations. That's being nice to it. It just lies. It says, "Oh yeah, here's the source." No, there's no mention of that word or that sentence in there, because I've had it myself in my own work. I've been doing some sort of competitive analysis or something like that, and I go, this competitor has this feature, and here's where it states, and then I go and look, and it's like, no, it doesn't, or it does, but it works completely differently to what you said. So yeah.
And then bringing it back, James, to a lot of our listeners or podcasters and or bloggers themselves, they do a lot of So in the future, dear listeners, start with the conclusion of your blog and do the storytelling bit below. So problem, solution, and then everything that normally is in between the problem and the solution, just move it down. So you get
solution then problem. Is that what you're saying?
No, perhaps start with the problem and then the solution, and then everything that's in between, from getting from the problem to the solution, put that as a storytell below.
Does that not mean blogs are going to look a bit weird?
Yeah, they're just going to look different. I know I know a lot about this. My wife actually is a travel blogger, so she runs our travel blog that used to get a lot of traffic before Google's helpful content update, but things have changed in that area. But yeah, I mean, a lot of what we've been doing is going and optimizing posts that let's say like the best hikes in Glacier National Park. Well, like before you would say, oh, I grew up near Glacier National Park, and I used to love going on these hikes, and as a local expert, and it's like no, people just want the hikes. So
Yeah, these are my top 3 hikes, and then
Yeah,
you can
I
explain
was
below why. Yeah, okay.
yeah, I was doing a blog and I was using AI and it was putting in something called a TLDR. It, and I was like, what is that? I was like, is that a new AI thing, or is that always been a kind of thing in
TL,
SEO?
like too long, don't read.
Maybe, yeah, maybe something like it
That's
was
like
seemed to
a
be like it seems to be like what you were saying. Like it was the first or second paragraph, and it was like summarizing what the blog post was about. So I think that's what you're kind of referencing is
yeah.
that's what you now need is the kind of a summary almost before, and then the content below it, essentially.
Yep. And another thing too that we're actually working strongly on at Informatica is doing like, putting key takeaways, creating kind of like structured data markups to, to tell LLMs like, okay, like these are the, key points, especially like FAQ schema, which actually ironically had really fallen out of favor with Google. They had kind of like discontinued supporting it, but now for LLMs, it's extremely important. So,
So you need an FAQ section within a blog post.
yep.
All right. Okay. Okay. So yeah, ChatGPT was actually right for what I was telling you. Because there's always been a certain flow to the way blogs are written and stuff, and it seems like we're rewriting them to optimize them for AIs, and it's a whole different mindset, I think, for people. So it's not just problem solution. It's like here's everything up front, and then here's all the context as well.
Yep.
It's just it seems a bit unnatural to me, but we're just all going to get used to it if we want our information to be on the means I'm gonna have to go and rewrite a lot of blogs.
Yeah.
Definitely. Oh, big time. And honestly, in a way, it's a very like journalistic approach where like if you were writing, let's say an article about a murder, like you would say very upfront, like, oh my God, there was a murder here. And then you would get into the details as opposed to like, saying, oh, I was walking by and, I noticed a body.
Yeah. So we've talked about kind of getting your point across first. What other tips are there, kind of, Daniel, in what people need to be doing with their content to get it linked, to get the AI to kind of mention it?
So topical authority, I think I touched upon earlier.
Yeah. Okay. Can you expand a little bit on that? Because
Yes,
just for people to understand what you mean by topical authority.
absolutely. So that I think that really it's been promoted by Google for a while, but I think it's become more and more important with LLMs. So it's being seen as like the go-to resource for something. So, back to like the idea of like best hikes in Glacier National Park, right? So let's say there's 10 hikes. Not only would you have a best hikes article, but you would have an article on each of the 10 hikes that are interlinked between. Then you would have an article on, different elements of, say, Glacier National Park of like, oh, what, here's information about the west side. And you had mentioned that you had an article. Here's information about the east side, linked at, et cetera. So really you're covering it comprehensively and seen as an expert by, Google, of course, but also LLMs too. I mean, this is how they decide what are authority sources and what are not. So, and interlinking all of those. So yeah, really just covering kind of every angle. I mean, travel is an obvious example just because, there's a finite number of things to do in Glacier National Park. Ideally, if you're an expert, you've done all of them or almost all of them. And, you could not just provide information, but also, that storytelling narrative, maybe not up front, right? But, to provide, original information, really.
Okay. And in terms of like brands, does this favor the larger brands, or is it a level playing field?
No, it definitely favors the larger brands. And that's why you have to use topical authority to compete. With like, at my job at Informatica, like we're lucky because, we're seen as, a big player in the data space. Like we're actually in the process of being acquired by Salesforce, specifically for our like, agentic, so like already, I mean, there are, look, not as much MDM on purpose because that's an area, but there's say like data integration, that's an area we're really working on. We don't have as much authority yet. We provides so many capabilities. It's just that it's not as obvious based on the content of our website. So like we're doing a whole creating topical maps, which is basically just, a series of interlinked articles, coming up with those topics and then actually producing those articles and linking them together. But, these days that actually extends beyond just your own website. That could be, anything with your brand presence. So YouTube is becoming huge. Even like TikTok and Instagram are now indexed by Google and LLM. So like all of this together, maybe your brand isn't relevant to Instagram. Like for Informatica, we probably haven't posted on Instagram since like the Obama era, just because. But
yeah, but it might become relevant.
Exactly, it might become relevant because now all of a sudden, Instagram posts can be indexed. So we could do something like a product demo where like we never would have done that 6 months ago. So these are all the changes that we have to be aware of. It's almost like actually the best term I heard for like the evolution of SEO is search everywhere optimization, which I think is a good way to look at it.
Yeah, and one of the things I was thinking is when storytelling and creativity become less useful because you have to be very direct with what you're telling on your website, and you have to be very concise and make it as quick as possible. So I was thinking maybe creativity becomes a little bit less needy and you need to be more understanding about what an LLM does and how it indexes. But if I hear like you have to do product presentations on Instagram, it will open a completely new can of creativity that you need to have to branch out into, to be a TikTok influencer to get noticed by an LLM as a company.
100%. Big time. It's kind of both, right? It's like, blog content is meant to be really straightforward. I mean, you certainly can do some level of storytelling in those, but really it should focus on the quality of information and providing original information as well. Whereas, you could go to social, YouTube, et cetera, make, product demos, anything that makes sense, depending on what kind of brand you're running. So it's kind of like a new frontier where like all of a sudden now all these different surfaces matter. Whereas before, it's just like, what are you doing with your website? Are you ranking on the first page? Like that was all that really mattered.
Yeah. And are you findable on LinkedIn or whatever? Those were the main things for a company.
Yep. And now it's like, can your LinkedIn post be, that's a great example. Like, it used to be like, you would post on your company account, right, on LinkedIn. Now it's like you actually would want almost like ambassadors from your company, like who have individual accounts that post, because those posts can now be cited by LLMs. So like that can help to build a knowledge graph of people and then create that authority as an entity who is relevant to your company.
Yeah, wow. And what you're saying is be original in the content. So when you're using AI to create content, it most of the time isn't original. So those would also rank lower in an LLM.
Definitely.
Search.
It's not that you couldn't or shouldn't use AI as, you could use it to assist in your content creation, totally. But end of the day, it's just regurgitated information, right? So if you're just providing information that is not useful to the LLMs, well, they're not going to really cite it because they already have this information. Whereas if you're providing new information or new, framing things in a different way that's not being framed, then that's why things like first-party data storytelling and, digital PR is becoming huge right now. So like the more original and thought-provoking information you can provide, the better.
Just we were talking a bit about blogs and stuff there, but how does the new search criteria apply to a website then? Is it in a similar fashion that you get straight to the point in kind of, is there a difference between a blog and a website and how you go about it essentially?
I would say definitely with a website, I similar principles where you want to structure it where, if you have things that really matter, they need to be interlinked, in the header, number one, super findable. If anything's more than 2 clicks away, forget it. It's not going to be surfaced. So make sure to structure your website so that, anything that you want to be found can be found like within 5 seconds, really, because, these AI engines are not going to really spend more time than that.
Okay. So yeah. Okay. That makes sense. If we're kind of looking at what people should really be concentrating on, Daniel, how would you kind of sum that up?
I would say building your authority, demonstrating your expertise, building trust signals. That's kind of like the EAT principles. That's been around for a while. So that's always going to matter.
Sorry,
But
what's the EAT principles?
Expertise, authority, trust. So yeah, those things: experience, expertise, authority, EAT. So that's always going to matter, is like, taking that mindset when, creating content for your website, whether it's for your website even, or for YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, all the LinkedIn, all these things that could be surfaced. So, kind of demonstrating those signals, but, also just providing the information up front, making sure everything is very scannable, making sure that you have, key takeaways, things like that. So it's kind of like providing really good information that could also be digested in 5 seconds. I would say that's the best way to sum it up.
That fits with how long people can read at the moment.
Exactly.
It's a very short attention span. So AI also has a very short attention span, just
you
like
got
we
it.
do.
Yep. AI is just a reflection of us, really, right? So
yeah, wow. And looking at the future, if you're looking at all these optimizations and how AI is looking at, is SEO a specialism that will still exist in 5 years, or will it have evolved into something completely different?
Yeah,
Are you a TikTok influencer?
I don't know if it'll necessarily still be called SEO. I think the jury is still out on that, right? Because there's this whole cohort now of people who are like, oh, it's GEO, AEO. I don't know if those terms will necessarily catch on, or if they'll kind of be concurrent with SEO. I don't know if SEO will still be something that just applies to websites, but inherently the job will still exist. And I think there's going to be more demand for it as more and more people are, using different services. Also another element too is like with LLMs, I mean, there's some level of prompt tracking that exists, but if you ever use ChatGPT, type in the same prompt and then go back 15 minutes later and type in the same prompt, and you're not going to get the same result,
No.
So that's why it's so difficult to track these things. So I think, we're kind of almost headed to this era of like, I refer to it as like billboard SEO, right? Where like you're just trying to show up as much as possible. And that's like, what's the if you're a company and you put up a billboard, what's the ROI of a billboard? I mean, it's unknown, right? Like you can't really say like, well, am I a personal injury lawyer? And 10 people called me because they saw my billboard. Maybe I'll ask and they'll tell me, but outside of that, if they don't mention it, how am I going to know? I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
You just have to know, like, oh, well, this is a high traffic road that I put the billboard on, and hopefully this leads to results. So I kind of think that's the direction that it's going. Is that I think and this is more broadly about digital marketing online. I think there's always been this idea, this kind of like HubSpot model of like what can be measured can be managed, right? And I think we're not going to be able to measure it, and to the extent that even we can today. I mean, we can't measure it relative to what we could a few years ago. So I think it's only going to go more and more in that direction. So the principles of just kind of like creating, high quality content across different surfaces that is also like easily digestible is still going to matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something for the future. So you have to keep shouting to get noticed. That's the thing.
Exactly. Yep. And as we've discussed, the attention economy is so poor. So you can't expect if you're making a product demo on TikTok and it's not interesting to someone within a few seconds, they're going to scroll. So it's got to be good.
Yeah, and is because I can also see that the way the LLMs are digesting information, that is going to change because of the marketing power of companies.
Definitely.
That they might that there might something like that SEO, some other alternative might pop up just to get some revenue from marketing as a ChatGPT, for example, or a Perplexity or whatever LLM you're having. But that's a really that's almost a philosophical question that you get. Should we use LLMs? Can LLMs be fed by marketing prepared information? Because then they would be biased by the marketing information,
right? And that's a whole other element too. Is like ChatGPT just integrated Shopify, Etsy. They just had integrations for Uber, Spotify, etc. So like, what's that going to look like? Let's just assume for a second that in 5 years, ChatGPT is much more it's still an emerging platform, right? Like if it's a dominant platform that so many people are using, are they ever going to even leave the app? If you could literally check out on the app, but then also there's this trust element. Like, if you buy stuff online, like you like to shop around, compare things. I mean, that's how people make decisions. Are you going to allow the LLM to make the decision for you? Like maybe it's not getting the best price for the product you want. Maybe you don't know what the product is and it recommends something that is not so great. And then next time you're like, well, this toilet paper sucks. Like I'm not going to, go with ChatGPT's recommendation. So there's this whole kind of new frontier of elements of like, how much are we going to outsource our decision making to AI, right?
Mm-hmm. That's a more philosophical question. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to ask my wife for the answer. Maybe then I need to ask a GPT for the answer. Yeah.
There we go.
What are we going to do?
What's for dinner?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we've answered the question. Has AI killed SEO? It's not. I think we're nearer to something like it's mutating.
Yes.
Would be, I think, a better description. So yeah, Daniel, thank you very much. This has been really insightful. I think it's interesting to see how things are changing and how we need to address it in our content. And I think there'll be some challenges ahead, but it seems like, because we have to write in a different way now. So I think there'll be quite challenges. But yeah, it's been a really insightful chat. So thanks very much for your time, and we'll see you on the next episode.